Well, what a good way to start a message on that no one likes to talk about. You know, no one likes to talk about money, so what an awesome way to start that. My name is Corey, and I'm glad to be with you, and I get the privilege of talking about the hard topic today, and so I'm really excited about that. Yeah, let me go ahead and pray before we get started, okay? Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for this day. Thank you for just what you're actually about to do in our hearts and in our lives, God. I can't make anything happen. And I can't open anybody's heart or mind to you at all. But I just pray that you would open our hearts and our minds, God. As uncomfortable as this conversation can be about finances, I just pray that we walk out of here viewing finances in the right light with, just the way that you would have us view finances, to walk in freedom from finances, not be enslaved to it. And I just pray that you would speak through me today. Thank you for what you're going to do, and thank you for what you've already done. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I'll preach it. Thanks. Awesome. Well, if you've been with Redwood Chapel, you know that we're going through a series over this entire summer called Thinking Biblically. And the whole premise with the series of Thinking Biblically over the entire summer is this. It's to change our lives to match the truth. Instead of changing the truth to match our lives, okay? So it's all about thinking biblically. It's all about applying our lives to the truth. In fact, if you still don't know if the Bible is true, we started the series, about why you can trust the Bible and stuff, but what a better person right here just to tell us why we can trust the Bible, if you need a resource with that, seek the truth, seek that. But the whole premise is, are you willing to change your life to match the truth? And so as we start today's topic on stewarding finances, I want to start with that. Are you willing to change your life to match the truth? If the Bible teaches something, and if the Bible's true, right? If the Bible's true, and it teaches something, will you change your life to match what it says? If not, why would we even start today? What did we just come here for? Just to get together with friends and hang out and have a great time? Are we willing, are we open to doing what God says, even if it means we might need to change our life? And that's not always comfortable, but it is always life-giving, and I'm excited to see what God does. We've been going through stewardship. So the last couple of weeks, as part of Thinking Biblically, we've been talking about biblical stewardship. Sam Morgan last week gave us a good definition of what biblical stewardship is. He says stewardship is the managing of our God-given resources, using our God-given abilities to achieve God-ordained results. That's what he said biblical stewardship is, and I like that definition because it highlights one thing. It highlights the fact that, first of all, what we have is not ours. Psalm 24, verse 1 says the whole earth is the Lord's and everything in it. That means everything, right? That means my personality. That means my gifts, my talents, my testimony, my finances. Every part is actually not mine. It's actually God's. And that's a biblical perspective, that it all actually belongs to God. Now, track with me here for a second, and you may not even be a believer in God, okay? And so this doesn't just apply to just believers only, right? But just track with me for a second. If the whole earth is God's, and he put us in charge and to run his things, Jesus gives a really good example, actually, and this isn't even going to be on the screen, but Pastor Sam highlighted this last week. In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus gives this example of a master that gives his servants different talents or different amounts of money. Right? There's a servant that has 5 talents. Kate, hi Kate, I see you today. Good. Gives 5 talents, right, to one servant. And the servant goes and he works and he invests it, and when the master comes back, there's 5 more talents, right? And it's really, really exciting thing. And you can read this story in Matthew 25. I'm just highlighting it for now, because what I want to highlight right now is that this stewardship idea is not just for Christians. It's for everybody, if the world belongs to God, okay? So in the story that Jesus gives, he gives one servant 5 talents. That servant turns around and he makes 5 more talents. What an awesome thing. In fact, the master says, well done, good and faithful servant. Go and enter the joy of the Lord. And then he gives another person, another one of his servants, he gives 2 talents, and the person with 2 talents does the same thing. He makes 2 more talents. And then he gives someone 1 talent. And that person with 1 talent says something kind of shocking. The person with 1 talent didn't trust the master. And so the person with 1 talent didn't go invest what the master gave him. He went and he buried it. right? And when the master came back, he gave it to them. He returned it to the master and says, here's your talent back. And what does the master say? Is anybody who knows the story? What does the master say? You wicked, lazy servant, right? Like, not kind words, okay? If you didn't trust me, he goes, Master, I didn't trust you. I thought, you work fields that you didn't own. You do things, and so I didn't invest what you gave me. And he turns to the master, and the master turns to him rather, and says, you wicked servant, right? If you didn't trust me, why didn't you at least put it in a bank account where it can get a little interest, so when I get back, I could have a little bit of interest with what I have given you. Here's what shocks me about that story. That story is normally used to talk about finances, but I actually don't think it's about finances at all. And it's also not just about believers or non-believers. It's about everybody. Because if the whole world belongs to God, if the whole world is the Lord's and everything in it, that means it belongs to him and we're stewards, whether we believe in him or not. Whether we trust the master or not, we are going to give an account at some point with what we did with what God gave us. Okay? This is not just a believer thing. This is not a Christian thing. This is a people thing because we didn't invent the world, right? God did. God made the world. And if it all belongs to him, then we each are going to give an account. So what I'm going to share today about finances, which no one likes talking about, and if I do this right, I can talk about finances, politics, and religion, things that people are not allowed to, right? If we do this right, we just knock it all out in one, okay? We can do that. But this is going to be a people thing about stewardship, about, hey, if it all does belong to God, then what does God want us to do with what he has given us? Okay? And now when it comes to finances, I'm going to give you a little story here. We're going to talk about what Jesus says a little bit about finances, and Jesus does say a lot about finances. And then we're going to be in 1 Timothy chapter 6. But first, let's start with what Jesus says. Jesus gives an example about finances here. In fact, in Luke chapter 16, if you have Bibles, you can turn to Luke chapter 16. We'll be in verses 13 through 15. Now, context for this story right here is that Jesus is around. He's teaching his disciples, his followers. And there's also some religious people that are in the area, and they're listening to what Jesus is saying, right? And Jesus makes this shocking statement about finances here. That may not be fun. In fact, if you're not a Christian, this may be like, man, like I want to like stay not a Christian, right? You're going to hear what Jesus is about to say. It's like, man, he makes this shocking statement here. He goes, no servant can serve two masters. Makes sense, right? For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. And this is what Jesus says that the whole crowd's like, dang it. Right? You cannot serve God and money. Now, mind you, the audience that Jesus was around at this time, these are religious people. These are people who are trying to follow God. And he makes this comment, you cannot serve God and money. And so for my Christian friends in the room, people who follow Jesus in the room, you can't follow both. You can't follow God and money. And I'm sorry to say that. I'm actually not sorry to say that. That's just the reality, right? Unfortunately, for us, maybe. Jesus makes this comment, you cannot serve God and money. So if you feel like you're serving God and following God, like you can't serve God and money at the same time, well, how do I know if I'm serving money, right? Let me ask a few questions for you, okay? For example, a little self-inventory. Why not do a little self-inventory to see, hey, am I following God or am I following money? Do I serve one or the other? Where's my heart at in this process, right? A little self-inventory here. Okay? For you personally, you don't have to write this down anywhere. You don't have to raise your hand and say your answer. But I just want you to be honest with this first question. My self-worth comes more from what? Money or God? And we could not be honest. We could just pretend, and kind of carry on, right? Or we could be honest, right? Where does your self-worth come from? Where is your sense of self-worth? Your sense of value to society? Does it come from God? I'm a child of God. Or does it come from your bank account or lack thereof? How about both? Okay? Maybe there's option C or D or E or E. I only gave two options, okay? All right? Where's good? Maybe it comes from your kids, right? There's two options here, right? I went to Nebraska public schools, so we keep it very basic and very easy, right? Two options, man. We're going to keep it just like that, okay? All right. Self-worth comes from more from God or from money? Okay, next question. I feel secure because of money or God. What makes you feel secure? What makes you feel secure? You've got to pick one. You can't do both. There's not a C. There's not a C there. Just money or God. Money or God. And these are for people who are following God, people who say, I follow God. What makes you feel secure? Follow-up question. I would quit my job if I had money or God. Your security. Your security is in what? Money or God, right? And sometimes when our faith gets put to practice, right, it becomes challenging. Okay, so security. Okay, so sense of self-worth, sense of security. Another question here. How many decisions do I make each day because of money? I probably couldn't count that. How many decisions do I make each day because of money? Follow-up question to that. How many decisions do I make each day because of God? Just put them together. Okay, maybe I'm the only one here, guys, right? Like, maybe this message is actually just for Corey, right? And this is going to be great. Thank you all for being here today. This is wonderful. But as I think about these things, when Jesus makes that comment, you cannot serve God and money. Well, how do, first off, can we just not assume that we're only serving God? Can we just not assume that? But can we take a little self-inventory and say, all right, God, what would you have me do? Is my heart even open to changing to the truth? Or do I just want to change the truth to match my life? Okay? All right. So that's what a little self-inventory there. Let's continue the story. So this is when Jesus says, you can't serve two masters, right? This is like the next part of that. He says, the Pharisees, what a great description of them, by the way, who were lovers of money, right? And Pharisees, just a little context here, Pharisees were the religious leaders of the day. They were the ones that everyone revered, everyone, followed. In fact, if they wanted to learn about their religious faith, they probably got it from a Pharisee, right? These teachers. These are like the leaders. These are not just like temple attenders. These are like temple leaders, okay? Church leaders. These Pharisees, leaders, who were lovers of money, that's ironic, heard all these things, and what did they do? They ridiculed Jesus. Isn't that what we do? Isn't that so much easier? Isn't it so much easier when you're confronted with the truth just to laugh at it and say, oh, that's dumb and ridiculous, that kind of stuff, right? And you can convince all your friends. You can convince all your friends. I mean, think about this with faith, right? Like, what if faith is real? What if Jesus actually did, live a sinless life? What if he actually did predict his own death, resurrection, and then pull it off? What if he actually did that? That might mean my life need to change if he actually did that. So you know what's easier than that? It's just to ridicule. That's ridiculous. I can't see God. I can't hear God. I'm not going to worry about looking into the history of that. I'm not going to worry about looking into the testimonies to the biblical accuracy. I'm not going to worry about doing that stuff. I'd rather just ridicule it and laugh at it, right? When someone says something that goes against our lifestyle, it's easier to ridicule it, isn't it? Just laugh at it, and you can convince all your friends, and everyone's like, yeah, you're right, man, that's so ridiculous. But here's the problem. Jesus continues. He said to them, you are those who justify yourselves before men, which is what we contend to do. But here's the problem. But God knows your heart. Man, you can fool everybody here. Man, I'm not serving money at all, not at all. Man, I'm the most generous person here. So awesome, and look at my lifestyle, all that stuff. You can convince everybody, but here's the problem. God knows your heart. And you can't outrun God. You God who knows your heart, your thoughts, your mind. You can't outrun that. And so whether it's finances or anything else in life, you can convince everybody else, but why not just change to the truth? Why not seek the truth? It's scary to change your life. It takes faith to change your life. But God knows your heart. All right? So that's a little bit that Jesus talks about there with can't serve God and can't serve money. Okay? Now, I really want to get to our practical text. So what does it look like to actually serve God with our money? What's a good balance there? Does that mean I just give everything I have? Like we can donate shoes. Nicole donated her shoe, right? We can kind of do that, We can make that happen, I'm a size 11 if anybody needs, But what does it look like to not serve God and money? But what does it look like to actually serve God with our money? What does that look like? If it all belongs to God, what is biblical stewardship of treasure? Which, by the way, when Jesus says you cannot serve God and money, that word money is mammon in Aramaic, and that word mammon means money and possessions. So it's not just your finances, it's also your possessions. Okay? And I'm going to hope that in 1 Timothy chapter 6, which we're going to get to, if you want to turn there, you can. I hope it's going to give us some practical principles for every single person in this room, Whether you have a large bank account, whether you have a large home, whether you have a lot of possessions, or you have nothing, whether you're in debt, whether you feel like you have nothing to give. I hope that this is going to impact you specifically. And if you're a visitor here today, this is not, I want to let you know that I'm not going to end this message asking you to give a bunch of cash to the church, okay? Let me just say that, all right? I'll give you my personal name and everything, okay? But not the church, no. That's not what this message is about. I hope we're literally not wanting anything from you because of this message. We literally want this for you, and I hope this is going to be life-giving for every single person in this room, okay? Does everyone want to hear maybe some life-giving words about how to steward finances no matter where you are in your faith? Anybody else? Anybody? Couple? Let's just see, right? Why not just be open to what the Bible says? You may not trust the Bible, you may not believe it. Let's just see what it says, right? You might find life. You might taste and see that the Lord is good. All right? So 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 17 through 19. This is Paul, the Apostle Paul. This is after Jesus was raised from the dead. This is after Jesus left and went to heaven and showed himself to a bunch of hundreds of people. Okay? He was on earth for 40 days after he resurrected himself from the death. Okay? This is the Apostle Paul, who's now a follower of Jesus, who at one point wasn't a follower of Jesus, at one point was killing followers of Jesus, but he had this encounter with God where he changed his heart, where he encountered the truth, and he didn't change the truth to match his life. He changed his life to match the truth. He had this encounter with God, and now he's out there planting churches. Now he's out there trying to spread this good news of Jesus, and it is really good news of Jesus, okay? And this is what he's doing. So he's writing to one of his followers named Timothy. Okay, Timothy was a disciple or a follower of Jesus, but the Apostle Paul is raising him up to go plant some churches, and this is what the Apostle Paul says to Timothy. He's telling him about what to tell the people in the church. He says, as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty. Now, I highlighted that word haughty because that's not a word I normally use. I'm Nebraska public school educated, guys. Keep that in mind, right? That word haughty means arrogant. It means having an elevated sense of significance. He said, as for the rich in this present age, and the word rich just means having abundance. That's all that means, right? And it's very relative, right? But as for the rich in this present age, tell them not to be haughty. Tell them not to be arrogant or have an elevated sense of significance because of their wealth. Tell them not to do that. I don't want to add to the text here, but I want us to think about the text here. I think the opposite applies as well. Tell the poor in this world not to feel like they're inferior than others because they have a elevated amount of money or finances, right? Don't be haughty. Don't be arrogant. Don't feel like you're more significant. And on the flip side, maybe you need to hear that on the flip side, don't feel like you are less than because you have less than somebody else. Maybe someone needed to hear that today. Your self-worth shouldn't be in your finances or your what you have in this present age. That shouldn't be where your worth is. And this is what Paul's saying to Timothy. As for the rich in this present age, tell them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches. Now, I like that word uncertainty. Think about the backdrop to this message right now, right? Think about the financial uncertainty that's going up and down. I mean, all of us, right? We're like a financial crash away from, losing a lot of stuff. We're like a fire away from losing, a car accident away, medical bill away from losing a lot of stuff. He's saying, don't put your hope in the uncertainty of riches, but on God. You see, here's the thing about money. Money kind of sounds like God and acts like God and behaves like God, doesn't it? Doesn't money open doors for us? Doesn't money give us opportunities? Doesn't money, or possessions or influence, doesn't that just like, if we tell it to do something, we can do it? Doesn't it give us an elevated sense of confidence, Like I could just quit my job today because I have enough, right? Here's the problem that Paul says with money is it's uncertain. It could be here today and gone tomorrow. Don't put your hope in that. Some of us need to stop putting our hope in our possessions, in our money, in our wealth. Some of us need to stop putting our hope in that, but to put our hope in who? But on God. Put our hope on God. Oh, that's freedom, because that's not uncertain. Doesn't God not change? Isn't he the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow? Isn't that predictable? Isn't God's love awaken us? Doesn't God, you know what I'm saying? Unchanging, right? I don't want my mood, my behavior, my attitude to change up and down depending upon my earthly possessions, which can be gone tomorrow. I want that foundation, that steadfast, that never-ending love of God, that never-ending God. I want to put my hope in God, the one who never changes. Anybody else? Right? 'Cause I don't want to be a roller coaster of emotionally here, right? And some of us need to, like, maybe we're having an emotional roller coaster and all these arguments in our marriages and all, because of these are putting our hope in our finances or our possessions. Let's not put our hope in that, but put our hope in the living God. Who what? Who richly provides, doesn't he? Who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. Oh. That's ironic. Abundantly, the word rich, abundantly, who abundantly provides us, right? I need a provider. That's what I need. I don't need all the money in the world. I need God. That's who I need. Who owns, 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills, or how you know what I'm saying, right? Said that, butchered that tremendously. Yes, Steve? Okay. Right? We need a provider. We need an uncertain, unshakable provider. One that doesn't get robbed. One that doesn't, like moth and rust doesn't destroy. Thieves don't break in and steal. I want to put my hope in the living God who richly provides. I need a provider, right? You don't need provision when you got a provider. You have a provider. He provides you with what you need, right? You don't need to compare what you've got to everybody else. You need a provider, right? Put your hope in him who's uncertain, who richly provides us for all things to enjoy. I thought God doesn't want us to enjoy anything. I thought biblical stewardship means I'm just like giving my shoes away all the time, right? All right, so a couple things here, and this isn't even getting practical yet. These are just some principles. Number one, don't find your significance in your possessions or your money. Number one, don't be haughty, don't be arrogant or feel like you're more significant. And doesn't finances kind of do that sometimes, right? When you've got you kind of feel like, oh, I'm superior type of thing, right? Or I'm inferior if I don't have as much, right? It can kind of do that, right? So don't find your significance in that. That's number one. Number two, don't put your hope in finances, but put your hope in the living God who richly provides everything for us to enjoy. Now, let's get practical, okay? So let's continue here. Here's 4 things that it's going to tell us to do with finances. If you want to be a biblical steward of finances, it's going to tell you 4 things to do. And this is going to touch on debt. This is going to touch on investing. This is going to touch on saving. It's going to touch on giving. Touch on all that. 4 principles. They are to do good. That's principle number 1. To do good. To be rich in good works. That's principle number 2. To be generous. Number 3. And ready to share. So 4 basic practical things, okay, to do good. First of all, does your budget allow you to do good? Do you have any margin in your life or are you able to do good? Right? And this is not just for people who have a lot of money. And some of you, when we first started, when Paul wrote to Timothy, he said, now as for the rich in this age. And some of us at that point might be like, yes, it does not apply to me. I don't have to do that, right? Well, thankfully, we're going to use all of the Bible here because remember, in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, it's going to talk about these Macedonians, for example, these people, this church in Macedonia, who gave more than what they had out of their means. They weren't just doing good and being generous and all that stuff because they had an abundance. This is not just for when you have an abundance. You don't have to be super wealthy to do good. You don't have to own a lot of land or property to do good. You don't have to have a large bank account to do good, right? We all can do good. We all can steward and do good, right? We all can be rich in good works. What's the difference between doing good and being rich in good works? It's so much easier to say, man, I did good. Man, back in the day, I did this and that. I gave, whatever. I did good. But to be rich in good works is kind of more of a present, like be rich in good works. Like not just work, but like works, do good things. Biblical stewards of treasure do good, and they are rich in good works. That's what we all can do. No matter where you are socioeconomically, no matter where you are, you can do good, and you can be rich in good works. I'll give you a couple of examples. My wife and I, when we were first married, we got married right here, actually literally right here, not on this, but right on the stairs here. And we were here for about a year, and after about a year, we moved up to Sonoma County. My job took me up there. and we had this nice one-bedroom apartment. It was great. It was fantastic. At one point, we had 6 women living with us in our one-bedroom apartment. You don't need a ton of stuff. And these are people that were going through recovery programs, homeless, like trying to get on their feet, right? And we had this perfectly good-sized living room. And we could fit 6 of them just laying on the floor there, right? With sleeping bags, pillows, couches, I mean, everybody, it's there. Some of those people are in ministry today. You don't need a lot to do good, right? You don't need a lot. Anybody have a car in this room? Okay, when I was back up there, right? There was this family who was homeless, and you know how hard it is to get a job when you're homeless. Okay, it's hard to go find a job and be able to go to work each day when it's just getting to work is a hard thing. And so every day I would go to my work, and he would take my car, and he would use my car while I'm at work. While I'm at work, I'm not using my car. He's using my car, taking his family, doing his stuff, and then he comes, picks me up from work, and we go home every day. On the weekends, he gets my car. I don't need it. You don't need a lot to do good, right? You don't need that. And I'm not saying that to for anything other than, I just want to give you an example of all of us can actually do good and be rich in good works. It doesn't matter what you have. Okay? So, what else does it say? Do good, be rich in good works, be generous and ready to share. Okay, so first of all, being generous and ready to share. You know what keeps us from being generous many times? It's the big D word, it's debt. Some of us are like, man, I would love to do good and be rich in good works, be generous, ready to share. I just have all this debt. I have all this, consumer debt that's really drowning me. And as the proverb says, the lender is borrower. No, I'm sorry, the borrower is slave to the lender. Yes, thank you. Yep. The borrower is slave to the lender. And I would love to do all this stuff, but I just have so much debt. I got to take care of that. That's why, biblically speaking, we don't get in a bunch of consumer debt. Right? If I'm not serving money, that's one of the ways you're serving money is if you're in a bunch of debt and all you're doing is to make ends meet with your debt that you've acquired, right? So that might be preventing us from that. And so if you are in debt, I want to give you a few resources to help you get out of debt. Here's just a few right here, just to help with that. Resources for getting out of debt. First of all, there's a national debt consolidation. That's a national service that we've got. If you have a bunch of debt, right? There's a national debt consolidation where they will consolidate all your debt and maybe even lower your interest rate to give you a better deal to start paying it off and get it going, right? This may not apply to everybody, but if you do have a bunch of debt and you want to get out of debt and you want to actually do good, be generous, be rich in good works, ready to share, and this is the thing that's keeping you back from that, let's start actually doing something about your debt then. Let's not be drowning in debt, right? So national debt consolidation. Another one is the snowball principle. Now Dave Ramsey teaches the snowball principle in Financial Peace University, doesn't he? So some of you have been through that. The snowball principle goes like this. You pay the minimum balance on all your debts, except for your lowest debt. With your lowest amount of debt, you put as much as you can to start paying that off. So you're paying minimum balances on everything, but then you're piling up as much as you can on that lowest debt until that debt is removed, it's gone. And then what do? You take all that and you roll it over to your next lowest debt. And that gets paid off quickly, and you roll it over to the next, and pretty soon you become debt-free. That's called the snowball principle. You pay the minimum balance on all of your debts, except for your lowest debt. You attack that with as much as you can, and that takes sacrifice. It takes you not going out to eat all the time. It takes whatever sacrifices you need to make so that you are not a slave to the lender, and you want to serve God and you don't want to serve money. Okay, it takes sacrifice, right? This is why we don't like this stuff. This is why we don't because it might mean we have to change our lifestyle, right? But there's freedom in this, is there not? All right, next is there's an app, and this is just one. There's a lot of apps out there, but one app is called the EveryDollar app. EveryDollar app is something I personally use. I track my finances and everything, what I spend on the EveryDollar app. That way I know exactly where every dollar is going. I just record what I spend and how much I have left in each account, right? So it's an app. It's a free app, which you can take, and it helps you kind of budget where your finances are going. And the last thing I'll say this is find a mentor. There are people in this room, you guys understand this, right? You come to the right place if you want freedom financially, right? There are people in this room that are financial advisors, people in this room that have written books on finances, right? On how to, experience freedom from finances. There are so many people here that know how finances work, but here's what you gotta do. You gotta be brave enough to talk about it. You got to be brave enough to say, man, I really am drowning. I don't want to serve all this debt and all this money, but I'm drowning in this. There are people who will walk alongside you and help you experience freedom from debt. You just have to be brave enough to say, I need help. And this is where I'm just be open to what other people would say. And there are mentors in this room that would love to help you with that. Okay? So that might keep people from being generous. I want to be generous. I want to do good. I want to be rich in good works. I want to be ready to share all this stuff. But I got all this debt. I just want to give some practical principle for that. Maybe you don't have debt. Okay? And the other part of the verse is to be ready to share there as well. What does it mean to be ready to share? Being ready to share means you have some savings, right? You are ready to share with other people. You're not living paycheck to paycheck. If you spend more than what you make every month, you're living paycheck to paycheck, even if you do have savings. You understand that, right? You're living beyond your means. But to be ready to share means you have savings, which is why it's good to save, right? Now, if we want a biblical example or look at Jesus' life when it comes to finances, you may not be encouraged. How did Jesus treat finances? Right? He would say things like, don't build up for yourself treasure on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. Build up for your treasure in heaven. Heaven, where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. Don't break in and steal. He'd always say, build up treasure in heaven, wouldn't he? Sell what you have, give to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven. He would say stuff like that, man. Who would want to hang out with a guy like that? It's like, dang it. That's the stuff that Jesus said. Why? Because Jesus had a biblical perspective. What's the biblical perspective of stewarding treasure? It's one word. Okay. Biblical stewards of treasure aren't spenders. They are investors. Think about that for a second. Jesus always pointed to the future, didn't he? Always pointed to our treasure in heaven. You're gonna. It's like the biblical principle of finance is always about investing. It's always about sacrificing now for later. It's not about instant gratification. And some of us don't like that. Jesus talks about not having instant gratification. Instant gratification is great. It's instant. It's in the Word, But Jesus' perspective is always about investing. It's always about the future. It's always about, hey, what you do now impacts your future. And Jesus knew that. And Jesus knew what's best for us, didn't he? Doesn't he? Doesn't Jesus know what's best for us? And he's telling us to sell what we have, give to the poor. He's telling us to not build up a bunch of, stuff on earth only, but because he knows what's coming, doesn't he? He knows more than we do, doesn't he? Isn't he the way, the truth, and the life? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, he knows these things, and he's telling us to not have instant gratification. And every investor in this room will tell you, and good investment is not about instant gratification. If you want instant gratification, Vegas is an hour away, you know what I mean? That's not what we're called to do. We're called to invest, and that's really what biblical stewardship of treasure is. When you do good, when you're rich in good works, when you're generous, ready to share, you are investing in the kingdom, you're investing in your future, right? God does not love you any more or less whether you squander all your money today. I'll tell you that. That's not going to get you into heaven, right? That's not about, like, getting you into heaven is just simply trusting your master. That's what gets you into heaven. But when you are in heaven, there is treasure in heaven for you. So what you do now matters for when you are in heaven. How you invest what you have now will literally impact you in heaven. It's not just about getting to heaven. Getting to heaven, Jesus made that way, didn't he? Didn't Jesus pay that price? You can't pay that price. You don't have enough money to pay that price. The price to get to heaven was Jesus' body and blood broken and poured out for you. Faith in him. And I wouldn't believe that except for the fact that he predicted his death, resurrection, and then he pulled it off, guys. Like, probably start trusting what he's saying, If you want to get to heaven, you got to place your faith in the one who could predict his death, his resurrection, pull it off, and do a whole bunch of other things that's recorded in history if we're willing to actually look into it. But for those of us that are, like, going to heaven, it's not just like sit back and chill the rest of your life now, because isn't the whole earth the Lord's and everything in it? Isn't it about stewarding what he's got? Isn't it about investing in his purposes, right? And it's going to impact you in the future. That's why Jesus would have the audacity to say, sell what you have, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. That's why he'll have the audacity to say, don't build up for yourself treasure on earth, in parentheses, only. Not that wealth is bad, not that possessions are bad. There's plenty of wealthy, people in the Bible. You understand this, right? Abraham, right? Understand this. David, you understand that wealth is not a sign of like, oh, you're cursed. In fact, sometimes it was a sign of blessing. It doesn't matter the amount that we've got. It matters what we do with what we've got. And how you invest your finances, your possessions, your time will directly impact you in the future. That's what biblical stewardship of treasure looks like. So how are you doing at investing? You ever thought about it that way? You ever thought about that what you have, like you can invest? Don't you want God to say, well done, good and faithful servant? This is what you did with what I have given you? No, we're just too busy comparing ourselves to our neighbor, I just want what the other people have, Or it's all about me and my comfort and my ability. And it's all about squandering what God has given me, not using it for his purposes. So if you walk away with one thing today, like one, it would be to start investing. Invest what you've got, your possession. If you want to steward treasure well, your possessions, your wealth, start investing. Remember, like those who lend to the poor, lend to God, right? God, here's the thing about investing. God always pays back. Always. And so what you're doing, you're investing in God's purposes, helping those in need, how would God want you to use the money, How would you invest? You're going to be able to be a part of that. And there's great reward for doing that. So that's what I want to encourage you with today. And that's been the big shift for me. For me personally, it's been shifting my mindset. Right? If I have a mindset of investing, I'm going to do good. I'm going to be rich in good works. I'm going to be generous, ready to share. Because my mindset is an investor. I'm investing in the future, investing in the things that actually matter. And that's been the big shift for me, and I hope that's the big shift for you. And if you need help getting there, if there's anything holding you back from getting there, don't just keep doing what you've always done. Actually be willing to change. Once again, God doesn't want anything from you. He wants it for you. And I think that's what the message is for us today. Let me pray. Father, thank you that we are able to invest what you've given us. How every single one of us, no matter what it is that we've got, or how little we think we have, every one of us can do good, be rich in good works, be generous and ready to share. Every one of us can invest what you've given us. It's not the amount. You decide the amount. We just want to invest what you've given us for things that actually matter, things that will go beyond this earth, beyond this present age, beyond the instant gratification. We want to do things that will actually matter in the future, God. Show every single one of us what that looks like in our lives. And don't let us just leave here and just, oh, great, good message, good word. Let me just continue. But to experience the freedom and the joy of investing what you've given us, God. And may you do mighty, mighty things. As we surrender, as we stop following our money, as we start following you, I can't wait to see what you do, God, as we do that. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. May you be blessed. May you do good. May you be rich in good works, generous, ready to share. I mean, what if we did that, guys? What if we invested? What if we viewed ourselves as investors? May you do that this week, and I cannot wait to see what God does in your lives. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time.